good evening, and welcome to Train Aficionado Live. I'm Jonathan Higgins, live from our Cincinnati studios, and we've got a great presentation tonight. We're talking about the forgotten railroads that I've stumbled across. Many of you may not realize this is the 10-year anniversary of doing the blog, and a lot of our blog entries involve forgotten railroads. So we want to kind of take a look at some of the things that I've covered in the blog, and also some of the things that I've stumbled across and taken some photographs and hasn't became a blog entry. Over the 10 years, I want to thank, of course, my dad. He's been a huge supporter of me being able to do this blog and the videos that we've been doing. Also, to Allie, she's been by my side doing a lot of this stuff as well. She helped produce some of the videos that you've seen, so we greatly appreciate the small niche group that we have doing this. Whether it's just supporting me or it's some of you in the audience, we greatly appreciate every one of you, and it's great to be able to be doing this for 10 years. The blog, and then of course the show since 2020, and I'm continuing to do more with this program each and every broadcast, and of course whenever I get a chance to do a blog entry as well. Of course, I really wish this was my full-time gig, but I work 40 hours a week doing my day job, and then of course squeezing this in on whenever I have extra time. So we greatly appreciate it. It's a labor of love. Thank you so much for everyone that's supported us, whether you're a viewer or, you've given me some information, either through email or being able to be someone that's been supportive. My friend in Massachusetts, Will, he's certainly been very supportive of the broadcast as well. So we greatly appreciate it. All right, let's get into the slide deck right now and take a look at what we're covering. All right, so forgotten railroads I've stumbled across. So let's take a look at this right now. So we want to remind you that we've got a whole channel of YouTube videos. We've got a really cool one if you're just joining the hobby, rail fanning for beginners. So it's pretty much, rail fanning for dummies, but we didn't want to call it rail fanning for dummies. So rail fanning for beginners. So if you're entering into the hobby and you want to learn more, check out this video. We have a whole bunch of videos we've covered since 2020 for the show broadcast, and also some produced videos as well. And we hope to produce more videos and have them up on the channel. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Do that now. Make sure you check out our social media as well: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Train Aficionado. Our next broadcast will be Wednesday, September the 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We greatly appreciate you guys watching each and every week. If you're a fan of the Scanner Guys or Train Aficionado or one or the other, we appreciate you out there. You can support the channel, helping us to, of course, upgrade equipment and being able to support the channel by shopping our store. You can shop Train Aficionado's store at trainaficionado.com. Of course, check out our blog, sign up for our newsletter. We've got several trackside guides as well, and we've got a lot of new merch on the store. So if you haven't been on there, do that. We would greatly appreciate you checking that out as well. So the forgotten railroads I've stumbled across. As many of you that probably have watched the broadcast over the last several years know that I'm from Middleborough, Massachusetts. So I grew up there, and there was several railroad stations that were in Middleborough, all of which the original railroad stations are all been torn down. There was one that was in Rock Village, and this is the Rock Village station, and then there was one in South Middleborough. Very similar building structure to the one that you see in the foreground there, with the two gentlemen standing, beside of it. There was actually 3 stations in Middleborough, and this was one of them. This Rock, Massachusetts, which is Rock Village, and then of course South Middleborough, and then there was a main station in downtown Middleborough. So I mean, I'm sure back in its heyday, it was quite a hub. So when I started the blog entry, doing the blog, I should say, this was one of the first forgotten railroad subjects I photographed. Is in Massachusetts, northeastern Massachusetts, and this is a beautiful train station. As you can see here, the railroad line that's right in front of it, of course, is abandoned. And most of the track on this line that goes from Taunton, Massachusetts up to Stoughton has been completely removed. The track is completely gone. But you look at this here, the track in front of the station is still there. Eventually, what will happen, I hope, is we will see, rail service come back there. This is phase 2 of the South Coast Rail Project. So the New Bedford Fall River line eventually will run on this route again. But as of right now, when the South Coast Rail Project starts, it's going to run up the Middleborough-Lakeville line, the commuter rail line that's existing. And then I believe the MBTA in phase 2 will rehab this line, and service will then return to, of course, this station. But this station was one of the first ones I photographed. I took photographs of this station. I took tons of them. And these are 2 of the photos that I've taken. Of course, you see one there at track level, and of course, one beside of it. Here's another one I've taken, prior to me leaving Massachusetts. This is in Rhode Island. This is the Pawtucket Central Falls train station. This is the original train station. Since I moved, the MBTA built a brand new station in Pawtucket. So it's a commuter rail station. It looks more traditional, like a regular MBTA station. If you're familiar with Massachusetts, it's got a platform and a parking lot. Nothing too fancy, nothing too crazy. This building here is, I believe, it's west of that new station, and then it's in between there and, of course, the Providence, Rhode Island station. This station is above the tracks. There's 2 main lines for the Northeast Corridor, which you can see in this photograph over here on the right. And then, of course, this line that you can't see too well that's in the shadow is the Providence Worcester. So the Providence Worcester will run on this 3rd track and then eventually join into the main line. I've actually saw the last circus train coming to Providence, Rhode Island, Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey circus train, run up this 3rd track, and I do have photographs of that. Back to the station. From what I was able to see photograph-wise, it was a beautiful station. There's actually a blog entry about this station. I've written a lot of things about this station. I really love, the character it had. Unfortunately, vandalism has happened. A lot of people went in there and vandalized it, graffiti, unfortunately destroyed the station. Unfortunately, I don't think it'll ever get rehabbed and restored to anything. As of right now, I'm really surprised that, it's still there. I guess apparently, structurally wise, it's not creating any issues, and it probably costs more money to tear it down than to just basically leave it. This would have been awesome to be able to see this station come back to life. Being a station that you would go down to the platform below and then come up to a large concourse. And it was, a beautiful station. You can see some photographs on the blog and more information about this station as well. Moving on, so my dad and I were taking a drive. We were down in western Massachusetts, and we went to the Norman Rockwell Museum. So we went to the museum, and we took a little ride after that. And then we stumbled across this freight depot, which is on the left of your screen, and then on the right, the passenger train, New Great Barrington, Mass Freight and Passenger Depot. I believe the passenger depot is now a residence, I think, and then I'm not too sure what the purpose of the freight depot, if any. Both structures are fairly close to each other, pretty much, I would say maybe 1,000 feet or so away from each other. And they're both on the same side of the tracks. Beautiful structure. My friend Will Grube, he lives in Plymouth. He actually loves this freight depot. He said, can you send me photographs of it? So I sent him a whole bunch of photographs of it. And he thought it was interesting with its character. You see that wood. It's almost like it's weathered, and it looks pretty awesome. And of course, I believe the passenger depot, this is not the original colors, I don't think. But yeah, I mean, that definitely has some character as well. Both wooden structures, both seem to be in good condition. And this was, we were just following the tracks and we stumbled across these buildings. So my dad and I pulled off, we took photographs of them, and then we explored a little bit more. So the great thing about being a rail fan is not only rail fanning, trains and such. There's other things that are out there, like these buildings that are treasures that maybe no longer be used by the railroad, and they may be repurposed, as you'll see with some more slides. This is an interesting one. This is in Plainville, Massachusetts. So I've driven down this road a whole bunch of times, and I saw the rear end of the building. And of course, many of you know that a roundhouse typically has a unique shape to it. So I ended up driving past this, and I said, I think that's a roundhouse. So of course, driven into the parking lot, it's used as a bus maintenance facility. So they actually, do work on school buses. So you can see there that where the turntable was, you can see the granite. I believe this is granite or some sort of stone here in the photo. You might be able to see my mouse moving here. Where the circle was of the turntable. So of course the turntable would line up with one of those doors, which are now garage doors, which are not original to what it was back in the day. And then of course, I've written a blog entry about this as well. So definitely check out, my blog entry that I've written about Plainville and then basically Rentham. The railroad line pretty much went through Plainville, Massachusetts, Rentham, and North Attleboro. And this was just one of those things I stumbled across. And of course, the other shot here is where the right-of-way made its way through, which is not very visible at all. So, many of you know that I lived in Attleboro, Massachusetts for a period of time. And this is a signal tower. I'm not too sure what condition it's in. I've taken these photographs in 2018. Of course, it's fenced in. It's part of the Northeast Corridor. I was able to shoot the photo that's on the left. I didn't trespass. I was able to get my lens through a little opening so I could get a photo of it without getting the fencing. So this is the Northeast Corridor that's behind the building on the photo to the left. And then this is the Middleborough Secondary, which runs from Attleboro, Massachusetts through Taunton, and then of course all the way to Middleborough, Massachusetts. So this signal tower has been sitting here for a while. There was a group of individuals from Attleboro that really wanted to try to save this tower. I'm not too sure if anything has happened with it. It's just sitting here. I think there was plans to relocate the tower at some point, but I haven't heard anything more about it. Hopefully it does get saved as years go by, especially the wooden structure. It's going to need more and more TLC as time goes by. So this is another thing I stumbled across traveling to central Massachusetts, Berlin, Massachusetts. So I was driving along, of course it was a fall day, and I happened to look over out the window, and I saw the rail through the woods. Of course, best time to look for abandoned railroad lines is in the fall. because of course the leaves are gone. You're going to be able to see a little bit more. It may be a mere path. In this case, the tracks were still there. They never tore up the tracks. And as you can see, it's been a while. There's trees growing in between the roadbed. It just looked like this. So, of course, I had my camera with me. As many of you personally know me, I pretty much have my camera all the time with me in case, there's a heritage unit or in case I stumble across something like this. So, of course, Berlin, Mass., I was able to get photographs of the Central Mass Railroad. And those are bridge abutments, as you can see over in the right side of the screen. Of course, the bridge is long gone, but, you can see that, the railroad line went through here. And the amazing thing that that you see in these photographs on the left side, there's 3 tracks. So I'm not too sure if it was a double main and with a siding. That possibly could be it. But yeah, there was 3 tracks, which was pretty amazing. Here's another cool one that when I was working at Scanner Master in Holliston, Massachusetts. So this was an abandoned railroad line long ago, and then the town of Holliston and many of the surrounding communities basically decided to put in a rail trail. So they ended up doing this Upper Charles rail trail. And of course, these are photographs in Holliston, Massachusetts. And this was really cool to be able to see this tunnel. I never knew that this tunnel was here. And it's a unique shape. You see how it is. And you look at that and you think, geez, a train went through that tunnel? Certainly did at one point. And of course, the roadway is way up above the tunnel. It's a short little tunnel. Today, a lot of people bike or walk on this rail trail. I was able to find behind an industrial building a bumper, as you can see right over here in the bottom left. And then this bridge is really cool. I think they finished the trail. I haven't been back to Massachusetts in a while, but it was, of course, going to go over this bridge as well. And when I took these photographs, of course, the trail didn't reach all the way out to here. So, of course, a lot of rail trails tend to be old railroad lines. The great thing about that is, you can make a rail trail out of an abandoned railroad line. It's pretty much a strip of land, that's narrow, and it's great for, for being able to join communities together, to be able to go biking, to do walks. I mean, some people will do, training for marathons or, for cycling, or some people just, casually just do this, just enjoy being outdoors. And of course, I haven't done a bike trail in a while. I hope to do one in the fall. It's a bit hot here in Cincinnati, Ohio, so hopefully I'll be doing some biking in the fall. And there's a lot of these trails that were actually old railroad lines. Here's another tunnel, and man, was I creeped out walking through this tunnel. So this tunnel is written in the blog. I don't remember all the details of the tunnel, but it's a part of the Central Mass Railroad, if I remember correctly. And of course, we're looking at the East Portal, which is on the left of your screen, and on the right of your screen, you're looking at the West Portal. They are working on making this a bike trail as well. So eventually there'll be a bike trail that'll roll right through this tunnel. And of course, it was, I forget how many feet it was. You got right in the middle of it in a summer day. It gets extremely cool. The temperature tends to dip down, being in the middle of the tunnel. It was wet, and it was an interesting walk. And of course, when you're at the beginning of the tunnel on each end, they basically make it so that the roof of the tunnel is completely finished. When you get in the middle, you get basically what it looks like when they blasted it. You can see the rocks. It's very jagged and everything. Um, Thankfully, I didn't see any bats or anything. If they were in there, they didn't bother me walking through. But yeah, this was a really cool experience. This tunnel, um, is the first tunnel that I've walked through like this that wasn't, a rail trail type of thing. It was just there. And here's some photos of the tunnel back when there's track. So, of course, on the left of your screen, you've got the east portal and then the west portal. Single line track running through the tunnel. I believe, this was, what year was it? I can barely see it. It looks like it was probably early 1900s. And it looks really cool. I mean, they had to, on the east portal, they probably had to do some serious blasting through this section because you see all the rock there. And then on the west portal, it pretty much comes out and then it goes over, if I remember correctly, I believe it was a reservoir, if I remember correctly. And there was a bridge that went over the reservoir, which is long gone. There's no bridge there at all. You can see the abutments in the water, but that's the extent of it. Here's something a little bit off the beaten path, a little outside of New England, Harrisburg, PA. My dad and I were rail fanning in this section. We actually spent a little bit of time here. We stayed at a hotel near here, and we learned that this club that maintains the switch tower was open on Saturdays, I believe. So we ended up stopping there. A group of guys, were in there. Super friendly. They were telling us all about how the switch tower worked, and they were super friendly. Matter of fact, one of the guys said, "Oh, a train's coming." And of course, I had my camera. He opened the window, so I was able to shoot a photograph out the window of the switch tower, which was really cool. We were probably there for a couple hours. I'm hoping that this organization still got running strong and with volunteers and such. They also had some model train stuff down in the lower level. Of course, the photograph that you see on the right is on the second floor of the tower. And then, of course, running through here is Norfolk Southern trains and, of course, Amtrak as well. Forgotten Railroads, the resources. So we want to share some of the resources that I use when I do a lot of my blog entries and of course just doing general research. This book, I can't say enough about it. Lost Railroads of New England by Branchline Press. If you're able to get a copy of this, it's a wonderful book. I do have a copy of it right here in my own personal library. I got a ton of Branchline Press books. You can check out their website, branchlinepress.com. And there's tons of books that are geared towards New England. There's a couple of different books that are for, the abandoned railroads, the active, and of course they did one about railroad building structures that are still existing. And basically, they traveled across New England, photographing those and documenting it. So some really great books if you're interested in history. Here's some websites that I've used. AbandonedRails.com is one of them, where it kind of breaks out each railroad by state. And then we also have a website which is called openrailwaymap.org. And this will show not only the abandoned railroads, it'll show the active railroads as well. And it tells you what subdivision or district, for Norfolk Southern, CSX, and so on. So you're able to kind of figure out who operates on that line and all of that. So two great websites to check out. So if you're kind of doing some digging to trying to figure out, who operates on this line, or is there an abandoned line that's running through my town, you may be able to use one of these websites and determine, there was an abandoned railroad line, and then try to put it together by doing some research, of course, and of course, maybe get in the car and see if you can find the old right-of-way and and you can definitely have a lot of fun doing that. Open railway maps. Here's a really cool thing here. You can see Middleborough. When I was living there, of course, there was multiple lines that actually ran through Middleborough. It was kind of a hub. As you can see here, the Middleborough to Mavericks line was opened from 1846 and abandoned in 1937. Not very long. I mean, a little less than 100 years. And then there was another line that I was fascinated with, which was the Plymouth to Middleborough line, opened in 1892. And this one was even shorter lived, from 1892 to 1939. And many of you remember back in the day that that Massachusetts was at one point the cranberry capital of the world, but as things started to decrease, this line pretty much served a lot of those cranberry growers. You know, they would basically take it from their bogs, load it onto the train, and then ship it out of there. But unfortunately, as things changed, this line eventually slowly started to become more and more abandoned in sections. And many of you that are familiar with Massachusetts, a lot of this railroad line is Route 44, traveling from Middleborough all the way out to Plymouth. So, and then of course there was a depot that was their cutest depot. Of course it was torn down. I do have photographs of it in a blog entry that I wrote about this particular line and so forth. And then of course you've got the main line traveling from Boston to Middleborough. And as I mentioned earlier, so the main line is right here, if you can see my mouse, and it comes down to the Middleborough Lakeville Station. Middleborough Lakeville Station is actually going to be relocated over here once the New Bedford Fall River line starts, because the New Bedford Fall River line trains are going to travel on this line here, which is the Middleborough Secondary, and then it's going to go down to a junction and then go to Mavericks and split. Trains will travel to the south to Fall River and then continue heading further down the line towards New Bedford. And then, of course, last but not least, this leg here is the Cape Main track. Currently, it travels from Middleborough all the way down to Hyannis, Massachusetts. So, a little bit of history there. And this is just looking at open railway maps. I just took a screenshot of this, and of course this is a table of contents. As you can see here, the abandoned line, you can see a branch line, you can see of course a main line, all in the charts right here. And then of course you can see a yard that's over here, and then of course Middleborough has a yard which CSX uses right over here. Google Earth and street level is super handy. As you can see here, I've taken a few photographs of from satellite. You can see an old railroad bridge on this image here, which the tracks are gone, but the trestle is still there. And then you can also see this abandoned line here, which cuts across the road, which is still visible. But if you look down and into here, you can see it's completely overgrown, and there's no trains at all that have been down this line. So certainly you can take a look at some of this stuff from satellite, and then of course at street level if you're able to kind of determine where it cut through. Some interesting numbers, railroad infrastructure by the numbers. U.S. railway network is 140,000 miles. And amongst those miles, there's over 100,000 plus railroad bridges. That's a lot of bridges. Crossing, rivers, creeks, maybe elevated sections of a particular, surface, or even over a roadway or highway or anything like that. And then Amtrak's network. Of course, many of you know that Amtrak doesn't own all the lines that they run on. They're a guest on many of them. So it's about 21,000 miles of track. that Amtrak has. And then the Class 1 railroads, roughly looking at about 95,000 miles. And this is a part of a report that was put out in 2017, an infrastructure report. And there is a website down at the bottom here which is accredited to that as well. So these numbers may have changed, but this is the current numbers of that time. Abandoned right-of-ways. Now this is a staggering number, and of course this is probably a number that has changed. It's estimated 80,000 miles of track were abandoned in the U.S. in between 1950 and 2000. It's a lot of track. A lot of it was because of there was multiple railroads servicing, maybe going from Boston to New York. And as many of the railroads merged together, they got rid of the redundant routes. So pretty much they would pick the route that would be more cost effective, maybe more level, a more direct route. There may have been some realignments as well, with making the route straighter and faster. So essentially, a lot of those abandoned secondary routes were abandoned, creating for 80,000 miles of track, and some of which maybe the railroad no longer services, and there was no, that was the only line. So eventually the railroads abandoned it because it was getting too much to, for a railroad, whoever owned it, to maintain it. So that's a staggering number right there. Rails to trails. I'm okay with rails to trails as long as they're not pushing to remove a railroad that's active. That is not something that I agree with. Basically a community says, we don't want the railroad anymore. We want to take their railroad line and make it into a rails to trails. What I appreciate of the organization is when the railroad line's been abandoned, the track's gone, it's never going to come back again. This is a great way to preserve the history of this railroad line. So you can ride your bike, walk on this right of way, knowing that railroad trains, rolled through here, in its heyday, probably many of them, passenger trains and freight trains. So looking at their numbers, currently they have, and this is a number that dates back, they have over 2,213 open rail to trails covering over 24,000 miles. And then projects at this time, when I did this particular slide, there was 849 projects with over 9,000 miles planned. Now I used this slide a couple years ago, so these numbers may have changed. But you can of course learn more about how many miles that Rails to Trails has with their website, railstotrails.org. So those are a few of the forgotten railroads that I've stumbled across. Certainly a lot of stuff that I've done over the years. I mean, this is probably only a sampling of what I've been able to capture, through my lens. Of course, I got a lot of photographs that I've taken over the years. And of course, I'm trying to do a little bit more of that in here in the tri-state area, in between Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. So I hope to kind of follow some of the history of these lines as well. But yeah, there's tons of abandoned railroad tracks throughout the Northeast. There was a lot of railroad lines. That's why, this book, Forgotten Railroads of New England, is a great guide. I mean, the thing, as you can see here, there are some maps of the various lines. So you can kind of do some great research. I wish a lot of states would have somebody like this to be able to publish something this great. And I can't say enough about Branch Line Press. They are a great resource for books for New England. And then, of course, my worry is eventually it's going to go out of publication. If these books do go out of publication, certainly be on the lookout for them on the, at train shows and such. A lot of times people may be using those. even half-price books, if you got one of those near you, definitely check that out. Dale mentions there is a boat landing of abandoned tracks in Montana. I believe that. Yeah, there's a lot of... Did I read that correct? Yeah, there's a boat. Yeah. Boatload. Why did I say boat landing? Sorry, a boatload. Sorry. I've been up since 5 o'clock in the morning, so if I say something off, boat landing. Sorry, Dale. Oh, okay. Live show, as we can see here. Yeah, Middleborough's not too far from Bridgewater. Yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, there's a lot of railroad history that's in Middleborough, and of course, in Bridgewater as well. The train station that's currently there is currently, I think it still is, a Burger King. Looks like a Burger King on the inside, but the outside of it, you definitely can tell it's a train station. Mattapoisett. I saw somebody mention about something about Mattapoisett. There is a bike trail that runs through Mattapoisett, which runs from Fairhaven, and I'm not too sure if they extended it all the way out to Wareham. But this was a branch that came off the Cape Main line and made its way to Fairhaven, Massachusetts. And they made that into a bike trail. Really nice bike trail. I can say that it's an easy bike ride. It's fairly flat. So, you know, not a lot of hills. That's a great thing about a bike trail that's on a railroad line. Typically, it's a flat grade for the most part. You're not going to have a lot of ups and downs unless it was a line that was, you know, all they could do, you know, to try to flatten it. What happens to all the removed steel once a line's abandoned? I really think if a line like one of the major railroads is using now and they're going to abandon it, I believe they sell that steel off. It's got to be worth something. So that's why a lot of times when a line gets abandoned today, they will pull up the steel. You know, all of that will go away. You'll find that you only see these lines with the rail still there if it was abandoned at a certain time, you know, prior to them figuring out, oh, we can make money off of this. Any other questions or comments? We'll happy to answer any of those as we sit here. But yeah, I mean, some great stuff, you know, with doing this hobby. If you're a history buff, there's a lot of things that you can do as a rail fan, you know, being able to, of course, photograph, you know, trains. You're able to photograph some of these buildings, maybe document an abandoned railroad line. Occasionally, an abandoned railroad line will become active again. Yes, and that's a great thing about it. Some places you do have, like Union Pacific 1943 mentions, we do have an abandoned lines in Texas, and they do have a rail guide map. Those are so great to be able to use something like that, so you can kind of do your research and see if you can find, you know, that railroad line. A lot of times what you can do on Google Earth is you can find a portion of that cut and then keep following it and following it and following it. And eventually, it'll be off of a main line or a secondary line, or you may find that a portion of it was abandoned and all of a sudden there's track, maybe servicing an industrial park or something where there's still a customer on a section of that track, which, you know, the rail provider services. So lots of good stuff there. We will actually go through a couple of slides. So if you have any additional questions, post them in the comments. But let's remind you of a couple of things right now. So, of course, tonight's topic of discussion, the forgotten railroads I stumbled across. And, of course, this is only a few of the railroad lines that I've kind of stumbled across, and also some of those building structures as well. So we want to remind you, if you're joining the channel for the very first time, we've got so many videos on the channel. Feel free to watch as many as you like. We have them all here on the channel. We also have some produced videos, such as the move of the Hamilton Depot, which we covered towards the tail end of last year, and the beginning of this year. So it was 2 buildings. They actually relocated. The city of Hamilton, Ohio was able to move those buildings, and they're going to repurpose them. We're going to have to do a follow-up video or some photographs with a blog entry to show the progress as the city gets those prepped for hopefully a restaurant or somebody to use that space. Of course, the video that we're highlighting here is rail fanning for beginners. So if you're just joining the hobby, certainly watch that video. Learn some tips and tricks as well. We're also going to have some rail fan events on the website. So make sure you check out trainaficionado.com. We have some classes that will be virtual and actually at the Cincinnati Union Terminal here in Ohio. We'll have those dates on the event page as soon as I get those locked in. Our next show will be Wednesday, September the 6th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, live right here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as always, follow, like, and subscribe to all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Train Aficionado. Make sure you support the channel as well. We do have some swag if you want to, promote that you're a rail fan or promote the show as well. We've got t-shirts, hats, and travel mugs and hoodies, and I think we got some jackets now. We got all types of stuff, stickers. So definitely check out the store, trainaficionado.com. Get some really cool swag, and of course support the channel as well. So we greatly appreciate that too. So tonight's show, as I mentioned earlier, Forgotten Railroads I've stumbled across. So we greatly appreciate you guys joining. Thanks, Charles, for mentioning a terrific show as always. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you watching the show this evening. I hope that you have a great night. I do have Jim just mentioned something in New York. CSX is starting pulling up the track and sidings to keep problem trains from having a place to drop. Was it? Sorry, I'm doing this live. CSX has pulled up track sidings to keep problem trains from having a place to drop equipment. I get you. So yeah, they're pulling up some of those sidings, so they don't have an option. Leave the equipment, essentially, is what I'm reading here, which is quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's all types of crazy stuff out there, but definitely a great watching the show, as you always do out there, so we appreciate that. We hope that you have a great evening, safe rail fanning. If you haven't got out there this summer and do some rail fanning, certainly do that. We still got a little bit of great weather to be able to be trackside, and of course, those of you that are in a colder climate, there's going to be a lot of armchair rail fanning if you watch a lot of the videos on Railstream, and then there's some other cameras on YouTube as well. So thank you so much. Have a great evening. We'll catch you again next week for the Scanner guys. Have a great night. Thank you so much.